Collecting is a huge business, especially for beloved franchises like Star Wars. And whilst I've never had the inclination or the financial ability to seriously get into collecting, it still astonishes me how some items can be so rare and expensive. Now, this weekend just gone, there was an auction held by Heritage Auctions, and there was a lot of Star Wars items in there. One of them got some coverage in the news because it was the original Princess Leia slave outfit, and that sold for a massive $175,000. And so naturally that got me looking through some of the other items in the sale, and to my astonishment, that wasn't even the most expensive item that was sold. The most expensive item was this original scale Y-Wing model from A New Hope, and that went for over $1.5 million. It's insane to think that something in 1976, which probably cost a few $100s, maybe a few thousand, is now being sold for $1.5 million. And it gets me thinking, what is it that makes something like that so valuable? Is it rarity? Because it is apparently only one of two models like that was created for the film. Is it sentimentality? The idea that this is something that the geniuses at ILM crafted and held? I think it's probably a mix of all those things put together, but it just still blows my mind. And so that leads me here to the other items, not necessarily in that particular sale. Some of them will be from that particular auction, but these are all sold by Heritage Auctions over the years, so I want to play a little game. We are going to look through the different items that I've picked out, and you're going to try and guess how much you think these particular items were sold for. Now, I'll give you a good description of the items as we go along. Some of them might surprise you, and they will vary from the millions to the hundreds, and anything in between, and I want you to let me know in the comments how many you got spot on, or how many you got close to being right. If there's any that surprised you, again, let me know. But at the end of each item that we look, I will reveal the total price, and we'll see if you got anywhere close. Now, we're going to start off with something that I think might be relatively easy. This is the Luke Skywalker hero lightsaber from Star Wars and Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Now, this is from the original film. This is a prop. It's the non-fighting version, and something I didn't realize up until I looked into this is I didn't realize that the lightsaber itself is an existing item. It's a Graflex handle. So you remember those old-timey cameras that had the separate flash bulb, and it had, you know, a little holder that you would grab onto, a cylinder? That's all that this is, with some rubber casing on it and some buttons. That's crazy to me that they took something from a camera, stuck on some rubber and buttons, and now we have one of the most iconic lightsabers in all of, you know, Star Wars history. So again, this is an original movie prop. It is the non-fighting version, so it doesn't have any of the built-in mechanics, I guess, for the rotary blade. How much do you think this went for? I will give you 3 seconds before we reveal. 3, 2, 1, boom, $450,000. So this is worth 3 times the amount of Princess Leia's slave outfit. Quite a lot for what is essentially a metallic tube that once belonged to a camera. Okay, item number 2, and it is another rare one. It is a movie prop, and this is an original screen-matched costume of an Imperial Stormtrooper. So one of the original costumes from A New Hope clearly is going to be quite rare, and according to the site, there was only 6 helmets made at the time of filming. So that does make this exceedingly rare. Now, you can actually see from the photos that it's a little bit yellowed over time. You know, the pristine white armor has clearly been sun-bleached, or has just kind of lost its fade. Maybe someone was smoking around it, you know? Smoking causes damage to pure white objects. And yeah, again, this is kind of like a piece of history. I don't know if the gloves come with it. It appears as though the hands itself are not present. But you can see here, it is a bit odd how all of the different panels are different colours. Clearly, they've been stored in different places. But that is one of the original helmets. And I guess up close in HD, you can see just how rough the paintwork actually is. And, you know, again, that's just because they knew that the details would not necessarily be hyper focused on, because it was 1976 and HD, you know, movies didn't exist. But it's interesting to see, you know, exactly what we're working with from these original films. So Yes, an original Stormtrooper outfit. How much do you think that goes for? More than a lightsaber? Less than a slave outfit? This went for $645,000 last year. Again, absolutely crazy amounts of money. But this is, again, probably only one of 2 or 3 original existing costumes for Stormtroopers if they only made 6 helmets. I can't imagine there's many that were kept in full working condition. So another bit of rare history. Okay, moving on to another prop from the film. This is the DH-17 blaster. It is the blaster that we see the Rebels use on Hoth. It is just a stunt blaster. I don't think it was one of the hero ones, just to kind of, be heads up. It's made of fiberglass, so I imagine it's pretty light, depending on if there's any metal fixings to it. How much do you think this went for? It's clearly not going to be as expensive as an original Stormtrooper costume, but do you think it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. $27,500. That's how much it went for. And this was just a stunt blaster. It wasn't even one that I guess the heroes used. It's another crazy amount. Let's get some prequel love in here. So this is an original mold for the B1 Battledroid. So this is from the Phantom Menace, one of the molds that they would have used to produce so many of the digital models for the B1 Battledroid, and probably some of the static shots that they used as well. Again, that film did use a lot of practical effects, but a lot of the droids and aliens were CGI, especially during the big battle between the Gungans and the Trade Federation. So again, this is a life-sized model that was used on the Phantom Menace. How much do we think this is going for? Do you think it's more than the blaster, less than the blaster? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1... $15,000. $15,000 for a B1 Battledroid. You could own your own life-size B1 Battledroid for just the price of a second-hand car, maybe? I don't know how much second-hand cars are nowadays. Okay, this one is a bit painful for me because I used to own this exact toy. Or I should probably put it better, my brother owned it, passed it down to me, and I had it for very many years. Quite clearly not in a good estate as this, but this is a 1977 Kenner original Darth Vader action figure. It had this little kind of lightsaber slot on his arm that you could push up. You can see it there. It's outside of the arm itself. It was a very strange toy, but again, this was 1977. They probably didn't have a lot to work with, hence why his cloak looks very strange with it being folded over at the top. Clearly a very rare toy. This one is loose. It's not in its original packaging, which I'm sure is going to dent the value. But it is quite painful for me because I used to hold this exact toy probably up until about 10 years ago when I moved out of my my mum's place and I decided not to take my Star Wars toys with me. And I think they got chucked because my mum doesn't appreciate the value of old toys, I guess. But it's my fault for not taking it with me to Scotland. So how much do we think this is? A loose 1977 original Darth Vader action toy. How much do you think? 3, 2, 1. $13,800. I could have had $10,000 worth of toys just with this one alone if I'd have just kept hold of that. Now, admittedly, that sold in 2018, so the price might have gone up since then. But yeah, it still bites me a bit. Okay, moving on to something a little different. This is a movie poster. So this is an original 1977 promotional poster for A New Hope that was released in 1977. And it's very bare bones. It's very basic. It's coming to your galaxy this summer. And again, this is because at the time they weren't 100% certain, what the film was going to be like. They didn't have a lot of promotional material to really make the posters from. And I think Fox were quite nervous about whether the film was going to be a success. But this is an original vinyl poster. Apparently in good condition, but it is, now almost 50 years old, probably not very common. So how much do you think this went for back in 2021? I'll give you 3, 2, 1, $3,600. Not bad for a poster that just says coming to your galaxy this summer. Okay, moving to something that's a little bit more modern. This is an original comic from 2008 for the Clone Wars. It is a limited edition, one of just 1,000 copies, Dark Horse comic, and it's been graded. Red Letter Media did a really good video on grading things and about how realistically it doesn't really do much other than, gives people a sense of, value for an item, because at the end of the day, I don't know if anyone is hugely qualified or there's no test for you to become a grader. Anyone can set up their own business that grades, the rarity of items. So they made a really good video discussing kind of the issues and the morality around it. But this has been graded apparently a 9.8. You can see its original artwork, and it is a very, very limited edition copy of this comic. So how much do we think? It's got to be maybe less than the poster, do you think? Give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1... $7,200. $7,200 for a comic from only less than 20 years ago, 17, 18 years ago. I didn't even know this existed, to be honest, but clearly it was something done in conjunction with the movie being released. Okay, so this is something from that auction over the weekend that I mentioned, and it is the Making of Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back on Betamax. Now, this is still factory sealed, so still in its original plastic covering, and it's been graded once again. So something quite rare. I don't know how many people have Betamaxes anymore, so I get the feeling that this is definitely a collector's item and something you're probably not going to be playing at the weekend for your friends or your loved ones. Certainly would be very, very interesting, as told by C-3PO and R2-D2. Now, I don't know if that's Anthony Daniels himself or if it's going to be in character. Who knows? I don't know if there's a difference at this point. But how much do we think this is? Again, seems quite rare. I will give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1... Only $575. This is one of the lowest priced items that's sold on the site. Certainly for, this auction itself, it shows you kind of just how valuable some of the items were in that auction over the weekend. This was one of the lowest Star Wars items priced at that point, which is surprising given how, this is quite rare. Betamax, 1982, The Making of Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. It surprised me a little. Now, we all remember Return of the Jedi. We all remember Jabba's palace. Do you remember the establishing shot where there was that little toad-like creature and its tongue darts out and catches a little animal? This is that small creature eaten outside of Jabba's palace. It just, honestly, it looks like a cat toy. Which is why I found this really, really funny, because it looks like one of Zuko's cat toys. It's nondescript. It doesn't even look like an animal. It's just fake fur, with a couple of fake streaky feathers. And honestly, I don't even know how you verify something like this. How do you know for a fact that this was, that prop from, that particular movie? It obviously there must be something to prove it. But how much do you think something like this goes for? Surely it can't be as expensive as, the Betamax that we just looked at. Surely not. I mean, it's just a cat toy. 3, 2, 1, $2,460. That is the most expensive cat toy I've ever seen. I don't know who's paying that for something like this. I mean, I get it. There's probably someone out there who will want any bit of memorabilia or, props that they can get their hands on. I just don't think I would personally, even if I had the money, spend $2,500 on a glorified cat toy. Okay, let's get back to serious business. So this is one of the original Darth Vader helmets used in Episode 5. It's screen used. It's in relatively good condition if the pictures are anything to go by, and it was sold back in 2019. So clearly this is going to be more expensive than the cat toy. What do we think? Are we thinking hundreds of thousands, given, some of the other items? What do you think? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. $1.1 million. That is quite expensive. And I'm surprised that it is less expensive than the Y-Wing. I mean, yes, inflation probably is going to be taken into account. It's probably around the same price, but I would have thought an original movie-used Darth Vader helmet, would be more expensive. Probably one of the most expensive items sold, but this isn't the most expensive Star Wars item auctioned off on this website. But yes, how are we getting on? How many have you gotten so far? Have you gotten close to any? Let me know in the comments. Okay, back to the prequels, and this is one of the movie props from Phantom Menace. It is Obi-Wan's lightsaber, stunt lightsaber. And I remember seeing the behind-the-scenes footage of, him picking out this lightsaber for the first time. Obviously, they had to give him his Alec Guinness one in the third film, but for the first film itself, he was free to pick, a brand new lightsaber, which he loses to Darth Maul during the battle on Naboo. And, you see him going through some of the different, hilts. And this one is a fan favourite. You see later down the line him and, Darth Maul fighting. And if you look at the behind the scenes footage, they are kind of the metal poles, coloured in so that the VFX folk can do their thing in post-production. And it looks, relatively clean. It looks well constructed. A few little marks there. Again, these are stunt sabers, so it is going to be something that you're going to get chips and marks. It's probably not the original blade. It looks as they fixed them on with screws. Ironically, screws and bricks exist even in the filming of Star Wars. So yeah, they went through a lot of, blades themselves, but the hilt itself, I imagine, will be an original. So what do we think for this? Obi-Wan Kenobi, film used stunt hilt, 3, 2, 1, $125,000. That feels about right, about the same price as a Princess Leia slave costume, given inflation, because this was sold back in 2022. So yeah, that feels about right. Okay, moving on to something that is probably the most recent item in the auction from the weekend just by, is a original Mandalorian Din Djarin helmet from Season 1. So this was the actual helmet that they used in the first season of The Mandalorian. I imagine there's a few of them. Even now, I'm surprised at, how much, or how they got their hands on something that is so recent. You'd think that this would be in the, Lucasfilm warehouse, given the fact that I don't imagine there's too many of them. And they're not rare enough yet to fetch a huge price. So it is interesting to see something like this here. But I imagine that there is probably a good number of these helmets been produced by Lucasfilm, whereas, as we saw back in the day, there was only 6 Stormtrooper helmets produced for the original New Hope series. So what do we think this went for then? Costume original, Season 1, worn by Pedro Pascal, so that's going to give it some intrinsic value. It might be a little bit of Pedro's sweat still in there. I'll give you in 3, 2, 1, $40,000. Relatively cheap for something so prominent, and really, I like the design. So for $40,000, you could have had yourself an original Mandalorian helmet. Okay, another special item here from an auction back in 2023. This is, again, another original scale model, and this is Red 1, Red Leader, and it is a 1/24 sized model. It's got articulating servo wings, so it means that the S-foils actually open and close, which I imagine is not easy to do back in 1976 when, you're trying to do all these other things like motion control cameras, and trying to put together a massive film that no one had done before on a really strict budget. But you can see the detail that's gone into this. The pilot and the R2 unit are included. As I say, this was sold last year, and it looks fantastic. The actual detailing in the model is held up really well. It doesn't seem to have worn. So what do we think? Given the fact that the Y-Wing went for $1.5 million, how much do we think the X-Wing went for? I'll give you a few minutes. No, I won't. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. $3.1 million, and this is the most expensive item sold for Star Wars from this website, from Heritage Auctions, which is a huge auction site across the world. $3.1 million, that is insane. That is a mansion or a model. I mean, you must have more money than you know what to do with if you are buying something like this. But just imagine being able to mount this in your bedroom, or you've probably got an entire wing dedicated to Star Wars memorabilia if you're buying this, because let's face it, you're super rich. Okay, moving towards the end of our list here of the items that I just picked out because I found them interesting. This is one from 1996, or 1995 I should say, and it is a Game Boy Return of the Jedi game, which I've played. It's not a necessarily rare game to find, especially not with emulators nowadays, but this is still factory sealed original, and so it's been graded once again, pretty high grading, still in its original plastic. I don't know if there's many people who've still got Game Boys. I think I've got one rattling around somewhere here that I haven't seen for a while. How much do you think this cost? Give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. $2,400. Relatively cheap for something from 1995. And again, something I don't imagine is exceedingly rare, but still, you know, not something that you're going to see every day on the shelves of your shops. Okay, coming to our second to last item, we have a section of the Death Star, the under construction Death Star from Return of the Jedi. Again, a very well detailed model. I absolutely loved the space scene in that film. It was, you know, fantastically coordinated, and for the fact that it was in 1982 when it was made, I think it still holds up for the most part to today's standards. And again, this is just a small section of the model that they would have been using. I remember seeing the behind the scenes footage of A New Hope, and they'd built for the trench a massive, like 40-foot trench miniature, and it had 6 different panels that were just arranged in all these different shapes, and it included these turbo laser towers. Obviously, with this being under construction, there's a lot of brass elements to it because it's still got the, you know, construction sites and, you know, all of the different elements that, you know, go to show that it's not finished. So how much do we think this went for? Again, original piece of movie prop. Something that is quite unusual. It's a piece of the Death Star. How much do we think? 3, 2, 1... $31,000, which again is quite expensive for what is probably just a bit of plastic. But again, it's a very sentimental bit of plastic and been again crafted by some of the best in the business. Okay, and one from a little bit further back for our final item. This was in 2010, and this was an Ewok Mask. So again, Return of the Jedi. The Ewoks are, again, I think a point of contention for some people. Very much something that I have grown to accept. I loved it as a kid, you know, obviously that's what they were aimed for, you know, but as you get older and you look at it and you think that's a bit silly, Stormtroopers being taken down by Ewoks, but you come to accept it, you know, the lovable little creatures that they are. Obviously, the people in the costumes, they were a mix of, you know, children, and that's where Warwick Davis got one of his big breaks, was playing an Ewok, you know, pretty much started his career. You know, there was plenty of different costumes made. I don't particularly recognize this face, so I don't know if it's one of the main Ewoks or if it's one of the background Ewoks, as crazy as that might sound. But how much do we think this went for? Again, are we pricing it as more expensive than a video game, less expensive than a model? Probably going to be somewhere in between. 3, 2, 1... $22,705, and again, given inflation, I'd probably boost it up to around about $40,000 in today's money, as sad as that really is. Maybe $35,000 if we're being conservative. But that's it. That's all of these crazy items that I've been looking at, and again, they probably only cost a few $100s for some of the most basic, you know, up to a few thousand for some of the costumes. Certainly a video game is a bit difficult to put into context because there's a whole production behind it, but the actual cassette itself is probably only worth, you know, $20, $30, you know, based on the raw materials. But it just shows you how much value is added into the ideal of collecting and the rarity of the items and just the sentimentality that we put towards it. I, for one, I still don't think I would ever, even if I had the money, would look at spending these amounts on these items. It would really depend on the particular item itself, but clearly there is a business there for it. Another thing I'd like to know is, what is your most valuable Star Wars piece of memorabilia? For me at the moment, it's probably my Luke Skywalker lightsaber at the back there, which isn't a movie original, it is just a lightsaber, but, you know, again, I'm not in the business of collecting expensive things, I'm just in the business of buying stuff that looks cool and enjoying it. So yeah, let me know in the comments. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon.